Hey, coffee experts. Those of you running independent coffee shops, you're always looking for ways that you can drop your costs. And we here at the Coffee Experts Club really understand that. And so we've started something called Indie Coffee Coalition. And what it's designed to do is to drop your costs on two of the things that you're probably experiencing the highest sales volume in your store. And that is energy drink and frat mix. Those two line items, we've created our own products and are offering you those products at a reduced cost so that you can cut out the Red Bull of America. You can cut out the main lines of energy drinks that you're doing and serve your own energy drink at a reduced cost on a line item that you're probably already making a lot of sales on anyway. The best way that you can grow sales is by dropping your costs and maintaining a current volume. So check us out at indiecoffee.co and we'll love to tell you more there.
Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club, where we discuss all of the insights, expertise, and drama that goes into making your passion your profession. Our hosts, Aaron, Ben, and Drew, are three coffee experts who have taken their coffee experience and turned it into true expertise. They have consulted with major coffee brands throughout the United States and beyond, providing operations expertise and growth strategy for drive-through openings, multiple locations, and everything in between. So brew yourself a cup and hang out a bit with the Coffee Experts Club.
Yes, Coffee Experts Club. Gentlemen.
What up? Good day, my friends.
Yes.
Hello.
For those of you, I know that this is probably not the most appropriate thing to be telling people on when you record and how you record, but I just want to apologize publicly for making Ben and Drew show up on the 4th of July. Be recording our show today. I am wearing my barbecue shirt for any of you that are tuning in on YouTube.
Oh my God, that's great. I didn't even notice that.
Yes, but happy 4th to you, gentlemen. Happy Independence Day.
A token of coffee shop owners is independence. We like to do things our way. So yeah.
Well, I think it's funny because like everybody's like, I love having the day off. And I'm like, I was talking to one of our coffee clients this morning. She's like, there's a parade in our town, dude. It's like the craziest, most stressful day ever in coffee. It's like coffee never sleeps. Megan was, my wife was talking to me the other day, we were talking about Coffee de los Mayas. We're open 365, like 7 days a week. We're open. You can expect us open. Christmas, like Thanksgiving, whatever the holiday is, like we're open for it. And Megan's like, you're the worst boss. And I'm like, baby, you make hay when the sun's out. Like people on holidays, I always trip about it because, like there's some coffee shops that'll close on certain holidays, but it's like, no, all of your population is now looking for somewhere to go as a family. Like, don't close that day, bro. Choose the day after the holiday if you want to close the day, but don't do it on the day when everybody's out looking for someplace to be.
Yep. I remember back in the day, you on bar working those holidays, and inevitably there's always people who come in and be like, why are you open right now? And it's always like, because you're here. That's why.
It's one of our biggest retail days of the year is why.
Yeah. It's been slammed for the last 3 hours because nobody's working. They all just want coffee to get away from their families.
God bless capitalism and what independence truly means, I guess. I thought today we could talk about, we've been on this theme of grand openings. Drew and I just recently opened up our third shop down in Belize, first drive-thru coffee in Belize, the original drive-thru coffee in Belize. We've been debating on how we're talking about that on our signage. But anyway, it's been exciting to be taking an expression we've done a lot up here in the Pacific Northwest. We've got a lot of clients, obviously, that we're helping with grand openings. We just did our third grand opening down there, and it was crazy. If you missed last week's show, make sure you tune into that because Drew and I just talked about what do you do when you're having to open with half power and without an espresso machine? Do you still do grand openings? So we talked about, we still did 1,100 drinks and we learned some great lessons out of that. So if you missed it, or if you're thinking about opening a coffee shop, this is the place to tune in because we're going to give you great insights into that. But we were talking about it today about what are some of the other pain points. We have a client that's opening next week. Drew's going to run a grand opening for one of our clients here in Oregon, and Outsider Coffee, which we love. I'm excited for them for this new grand opening here in Springfield. Shout out to Ryan and Kylie, the owners of that franchise. But we were talking about the frustration sometimes around like you get all these new machines in, and like it's a lift with the tech, that these owners up in Springfield, like they're trying to figure out their new machines, So Drew's been working a lot with them with technology. And we talked about how Drew has had so much frustration with technology down in Belize in ways we've never experienced here in the States because you just don't have techs that you can just call on. Like you have to get into the belly of the beast. So Drew's had to learn these machines in a much deeper capacity. He knew machines before, but not like he does now. So I thought we could talk a little bit about grand openings, technology, maybe some of the tricks of the trade, how to stay ahead of the curve on frustration when it comes to like your tech.
Yeah, I mean, so first things first, you don't know what you don't know, and these machines, they're when I was a kid, I liked to play with Legos. I liked to play with my Bionicles, and I'd get a set and I'd sit down and I was determined to finish it all in one go. And it would take me hours. I'd stay up all night, but when it was done, I was satisfied. And having that little knack for working through the frustration, I'd like to say has paid off, but also caused me hours of extra time when I could just go to bed with some of these machines. And knowing out the gate and getting the proper maybe guidance from whoever it is that if you're a franchisee or if you're an independent coffee shop owner, knowing your machines, knowing the ins and outs, just basic level maintenance is going to save you a lot of time in the long run. And I mean, I knew some basic level maintenance, but it's how to get a lot deeper over time. And I mean, we've done a couple episodes around buying new, buying used, the benefits and drawbacks of each. And there are many both ways.
Let's qualify a couple things as we frame up for the shop. Because Ben, let's talk about your technical abilities, running shops. I remember we did that, some fixes at Road 68 when you were managing there and running things there. I mean, bro, you and I are very similar in this way. So don't feel ashamed about what you're going to share next, because this is something I would have done. But maybe explain to the crowd how you handled some fixes back on the Road 68 days.
Yeah, I mean, my fixes were if it could be fixed with duct tape, it was fixed with duct tape. And if it went beyond that, it didn't get fixed.
And I loved it because I felt like when you would fix with duct tape, it would probably some people fix with duct tape or whatever. That's just people use it as a phrase now, right? Like duct tape and rubber bands or whatever it is that people, rubber band something together. But I feel like Ben's fixes like that would stay like that for a long time until it broke next time. And then we're like, well, somebody please just send Cody out there to handle Ben's fix. That's ridiculous. We should not be fixing up our plumbing leaks with duct tape.
It's so true. You got a sagging drain pipe. You just make a little sling out of duct tape that to the underneath of the counter, and boom, your drain pipe isn't sagging anymore.
Bada bing, she's draining all over again. I love it. But so I will say there's probably some of you listening that you're like, hey, you don't want me in the middle of machines. That's how I feel about our machines. Is I thank God every day for Drew. Now, I will say we've talked about, I think this has taken some years off of Drew's life and what he's had to deal with down in Belize. Because when he talks about he's missing sleep, that's because for a coffee shop, you don't want to dick with your machines when you're selling coffee, right? So that means you have to wait till you close and you fix it till it's fixed, because next morning we got to open, right? So Drew has spent a lot of twilights. I know Cody would always talk about that. Our tech back in the Roasters days, he got 15 shops. He's going to be in between a shop somewhere. And it was a bummer. You have to do it either way late at night or earlier in the morning than they're going to open. And you always risk it in the morning of, can you get it done before they're going to need that machine? Because the traffic's coming, right? There's no stopping the traffic when you're open 365, 7 days a week. There's no downtime. So I will say, find your lane. Ben, I don't know if you and I are the best, appropriate to be working on machines necessarily. I guess if we had to, we could probably figure it out, but it would take us much longer. Drew, I've been really impressed with, but Drew, you did note that you had kind of a knack for it in some ways, with being a kid, kind of being more directed that direction. And then I remember even when you were going to start your own coffee expression down in Texas, you had taken your espresso machine down there and had it plugged into, instead of having a washer dryer unit, you plugged that and you were plugging into the 220 with your espresso machine so you could pull shots and work on your machines, right? So maybe talk about that, a little bench testing on fun in your laundry room.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had that machine and it had its problems, it had its quirks, but yeah, we didn't have a laundry unit in our apartment, but we sure had a space for it. And so I saw an opportunity and plugged it right in there. And
then would you ever think about, let's just pause. This is like the two lanes of people. Then would you ever ask yourself, my laundry room doesn't have a washer dryer unit. Instead of, it'd be more convenient for me to probably just buy a washer dryer and put it in here so I could have washer and dryer in my apartment. No. Let's take the espresso machine and plug it in so I can bench test it. I think there's two different kinds of people here. Ben, would you naturally drift that way or what?
I would not think to put an espresso machine in instead of a washer. That is for sure.
There was laundromats all over the place. So it was no big deal. We actually had we were lucky. I had my poor little sister we were on the second floor off the ground floor. And I just, come on, we got to carry this thing up there. And
my God.
The things are, a couple hundred pounds. She was not able to do it. Our internet guy showed up in the middle of that task and helped us carry it up there. and even he was struggling with it, but we got it.
Those machines are dense, bro. That's not a joke.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Well, it was having some electrical problems, and I was determined to figure it out, and I couldn't before I moved figure out what was going on, and so I didn't want it to just sit there and gather dust. I really wanted to get it sorted, and so you always want to have filtered water. So I bought a little pump and I used 5-gallon jugs, and I was pumping it in
Oh my God.
ghetto style, just to get it figured out. And that environment for tech work is probably the most comfortable, because I could put it down, walk away, which benefited me when I got it into where I can't leave the store at 1 a.m. unless it's pulling shots and
right.
everything's working properly, which is a little bit more of a higher stake situation. I don't know about you guys, but I've been in frustrating scenarios where my head starts to get like hot, and
Mhm.
my thoughts don't work as nicely in my brain, and it's harder to put one foot in front of the other. And so the low stakes situation of having it in my apartment and able to pull things apart and test things and break stuff and shock myself when no one was around to see, it did help when I was actually in a higher stakes situation.
That makes sense. I mean, so would you say, and going back to grand opening too, like it's good to have, I mean, it's good to be able to maintain. I think every coffee shop owner should know how to maintain their machines, right? How do you change the screens? How do you, change a steam wand? But going a bit deeper than that and actually, you know, would you say it's good to at least know what it looks like on the inside before you starting up a shop like that?
Well,
Yeah.
Drew, maybe speak about this because you're actually training our managers down there in Belize exactly what Ben is talking about. So maybe tie that in as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's levels to it, and I was blessed to see roasters kind of shape up their maintenance side of things as we grew with Cody implementing and managing preventative maintenance, which is not something that was happening. And so instead of preventing the fires, it was let's go put out a fire. Let's go, and it was always let's go put out a fire, and there was always going to be a new fire. And so preventative maintenance, knowing what little pieces are set to go out at what intervals, because
Mhm.
nothing lasts forever. The machine will work forever, but there's things you're gonna have to replace. Like, in a car, you're gonna have to replace the belts. You got to change the oil. Like all those things kind of come into play with the espresso machine. You're working with really high heat. You're working with electricity. You're working with steam and pressure. So there are pieces that are going to go out. And so knowing kind of the order of operations of like we had to do preventative maintenance on our steam ones all the time, just pulling them out, replacing the gaskets.
Mhm.
We change the stream and gaskets, every few months because the gaskets are made of like a rubber, and they with the heat will dry out, crack, and shrink. And then pretty soon your portafilters are pulling way too far to one side, and they're, hitting each other as you're trying to pull them out.
Yeah.
As baristas, I'm sure, have experienced that. So one thing Cody kind of told me when I was watching him work on stuff was, he didn't know at the time, he didn't know what all he was doing, and he learned through trial and error. And he said, track it from the problem to the source, and everything runs through either the motherboard or the boilers. And so
Mhm.
being able to track, like, okay, is my group head is leaking, and then track back from the group head. Okay, because there's a flow meter attached to it, there's a solenoid attached to it. What pipes are coming out from where? What does that lead to? And just kind of problem solving step by step, taking something apart, cleaning it, putting it back together. Yeah, that's what I've been teaching the managers down in Belize to do. And it helps them too because they're able to ask, healthy questions with me standing there watching, which
Yeah.
hopefully I have an answer for, or I just make something up so that it sounds like I have an answer for it. But yeah, just knowing the basics, knowing what things are called, super important because I mean, inevitably you're going to be ordering parts, ordering pieces.
Yep.
You want to have a backstock supply. If there's like 5 or 6 key ones I could name, just because those are the ones you're going to want to try and swap out when something breaks. And then getting familiarized with how to adjust the machine and beyond just the hydraulic components and the electric components, knowing how to adjust the water volume, knowing how to adjust the pressure in your boilers,
Yep.
all things you don't really think about because when you see a coffee shop, it runs, from the outside.
Yep.
But from the inside, someone's making it run. Somebody's managing, the problems hopefully before they become huge problems. And all that comes with just knowing what things are called and the lifetime of some of those smaller pieces.
Yep.
Hey, experts, we've got something really awesome that we do here at Coffee Experts Club, and that's called the My First Drive Through Coffee Masterclass. So if you're opening your next coffee shop, I think a lot of times you may think to yourself, I know what goes into opening a coffee shop. I've been doing this for years, but maybe you've been doing it for somebody else. And maybe this is your first option of starting a coffee shop on your own. Or maybe you don't know anything about coffee and you're just like, I'm looking for a good investment opportunity. Starting a coffee shop seems like a good place to put it, and you're going to enter into it. But what you don't know is all the things that you don't know, right? And so what we've done with this masterclass is taken behind the scenes, how you find your first location, what you need to be thinking about in finding a location. We give you a gift in the masterclass where it's a step-by-step process of how you're opening your coffee shop, the different checkpoints you need from coming up with your plans and talking with the city and then negotiating a lease. And then how do you build a team and what are the different pieces you need to be thinking about? It's a great masterclass, door to door, start to finish, completely free on opening up your next coffee drive-through. So check it out. It's at myfirstdrivethrough.coffee, and it's a great masterclass. You won't regret it. We'll see you on the inside there. I think taking a step back, I'm listening to us talk about this on the show. Maybe you're geared like me where this kind of stuff doesn't come natural. Maybe you're not geared like Drew. So in my mind, it sounds like what I hear you saying, Drew, is Cody was a real big resource to you at the beginning, right? Of you got to shadow him, you got to watch him. So I would say, like, if you're getting ready to do a grand opening, if you're thinking about opening a coffee shop, you have two choices to make, right? Do you go with new equipment? Do you do used equipment? Now, if you're on a shoestring budget, we're always going to recommend used, right? Now, the downside to used is it's been used, right? So you don't always know where it's coming from. We have the gift, and Drew, I know you would say this. We had the gift at the beginning of some of our early equipment. We knew where it came from. It came from Cody. It came from roasters. You had bought it. You know what I mean? You had it. That's what we were using. Some of the more newer used equipment that we've gotten, we haven't known the origin. And those have actually been the more pain in the ass, right? Because they probably weren't getting the preventive maintenance that Cody was doing all those years, right? And so we've just had some products fail. I think Belize, we have what they call, Ben, I had never heard this before, like brown power, where it's like, it's not a blackout, it's a brownout, and that it's an uncontrolled surge. And so it's been like frying some of our highly sensitive like machines, the electrical. And so Drew had to get into electrics, like we've had some water problems, right? Because Belize doesn't have the same kind of water we have in the States. So we've had to put a pretty intense kind of filtration system in to get the kind of water that we want so that we don't have problems with preventative maintenance downstream. So there are some things that I feel like you learned from Cody, and then like decisions we made about machines. So I would say, this is what I would say is, it sounds like talking to you, find a tech that you can trust. And I would say not only a tech that you can trust, but one that's going to teach you a little bit, right? So that you don't have to hold them out every time. And then if it's not you, find somebody within your crew that has a knack for learning or machines or things that they find this stuff interesting, because then they could shadow your expert and learn. And so you as an owner, if you're not geared that way, find somebody that you could begin to mentor or partner with, that like Drew and I are a great complement in this. Drew is a lot of the boots on the ground, hands-on kind of stuff. I deal a lot more with the bigger side of business and the finance and location procurement and some of the vendor management. But I think find people that travel in your right lane, play to your strength, and then find an expert that you can shadow behind, that you can learn this stuff, because inevitably you're going to come up against machine problems, right? The second thing I heard you say, Drew, that I think is really good is, and I think this is really a gift for coffee shop owners, is we don't have that much equipment, right? Like it's very specific things, right? It's the espresso machine, it's the grinders, it's the blender, right? Like there's certain things that you're going to have to really know, because that's probably going to be your main pain points. And Drew, maybe you can add some others, or Ben, that you think of that are always pain points, but like know those things, because I think that's the nice thing about coffee. It's not like we have a ton of machines that we don't know a bunch of things about. Like you can get pretty clear on these, the few 2 or 3 or 4 machines that you just need to know core basics on. And then how much can you handle yourself, and when do you need to elevate to a tech? Drew, would you say that's kind of the shakedown?
Yeah, that's summary of kind of what I was saying. I'm sure Cody on his end of the phone, because in Belize, it can't just have him drive over and look at my stuff, has faced the frustration of me not necessarily understanding what he's saying.
Right.
And so I'm going to stress the importance of knowing what pieces are called. And I mean, there's documents and handbooks on the espresso machines that we're using. And they blow it up, they pull it apart, and they say part number piece. It's really detailed and specific, but just to know, okay, this is what a solenoid is. And so as Cody's trying to explain to me, have you checked this piece? And I say, I don't even know what that is. He is dealing with the frustration of it. First of all, he can't see what I'm looking at. And I'm describing the problem to him, but because I'm not necessarily knowledgeable, I might be describing it wrong, so it all cascades into the more, the less knowledge you have, the more frustrating that's going to be for you, for the tech. And the more knowledge you have.
It's like me taking my car to the mechanic. I'm like, I don't know, bro. This is what it sounds like. And he's like, great.
The more knowledge you have, the less frustrated it's going to be when you have to fix it. And the more frustrated you get in the moment, the harder it's going to be to diagnose and to fix and to follow, the problem back to the source. Yeah, more knowledge, more power.
Would you recommend, now that you guys are in shop number 3, machine number 3, sticking with one brand and knowing that machine in and out, like going with just La Marzocco's or just Lineas, or instead of switching back and forth depending on what you might like that year?
Or what you found cheapest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so we're actually using a couple brands down in Belize just because availability down there. But what I would recommend, full transparency, but what I would recommend is sticking with the same brand. And even if it's not the nicest, most high end brand, if you can source and fix the parts easier, that's probably more important because you're going to be able to maintain it. And like a nice, expensive machine that's not working very well is going to produce worse coffee than a cheaper machine that's working perfectly. And so taking account of, is it easy to work on? Is it easy for you to understand it? Would it be easy for you to teach somebody else? Do you know how it works? Is it simple? Is it super complex? All those things go into, like, really, as the owner, if you're not the one who has all the knowledge of your equipment, you're going to want somebody to have that knowledge. And one other big reason that I'd like to have the same machines is they use the same parts.
That's right.
If I'm having a back stock of my supplies, I don't want 2 different closets.
That's right.
One labeled, La Marzocco, and one labeled, whatever. We're using Rocket Milano down there now, just because I'd like to have all my gaskets and screens be the same size. I'd like to have all of my portafilters be the same shape. It's just easier to run into the warehouse and grab whatever piece I need and not have to sift through, okay, well, do I have the part? Did I inventory the part? Do I even know what part's broken? And the more you work with the same kind of equipment, the more you're going to get to know, the parts and pieces and what goes out and what doesn't. And you build that back stock.
That's a fair point. I think you actually made a really good point here that I've never thought of, but I remember all the times we've been to SCAA or Coffee Fest and being on the floor with all the vendors, and the newest, like, coolest machine that's out, like semi-auto, modular, it's got a big pull handle, just looks freaking cool. Nobody ever stops to think, like, okay, but is that going to be a bitch to repair? Like, where do I even get like, is there only one location in the US I can get parts from? To your point, if you can just get like a plain Jane La Marzocco, you can go down to Walmart and get a part for that. Like, that's such a much better idea. Even though those machines are super cool, they're super cool until they break down, and then you're like, oh, damn.
Drew and I have actually had a lot of conversations about this, right? Because, we were really, or if you listen early on Coffee Experts Club, we were really pro used machines, right? Like, you pay a lot less, like, especially if you know where it comes from, like, it's a proven machine, da 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 da. But I will say, in this last year or so, Drew's like, bro, no more used machines. Let's just do new. Because such a pain in the ass for him. But then we've talked a lot about, because we have a great friend that's doing coffee up in Corvallis, Coffee Culture. And the owner there is a good dude. And like, he's helped us with some tech conversations. And he has chosen to buy all old machines and rebuild them because he feels like the chassis is better. Like, the whole machine just it's built more to last than the newer machines that are like a lot more difficult to work on, quite frankly. And so we've had a lot of conversations, Drew and I, about what era of La Marzocco are we buying? And then like, can we buy within the same family? Because, I mean, Drew, this has happened like at least 4 or 5 times now where we've ordered parts, which is a freaking bitch in Belize. We order parts through our La Marzocco rep, or whatever. We get the piece. It ships all the way down to Belize. It takes like 3 to 4 weeks to get there. It gets there, and Drew's like, damn it, it's the wrong part. You know what I mean? And so then it's like it's such a pain in the ass. So to Drew's point, like, we're wanting to backlog like certain pieces that fail all the time, right? So we have 3 or 4 on hand, because when you have 3 locations and you have a couple machines per location, so that, because we never want to run out of an espresso machine, that we want to rotate around, like, you want to have the right parts. And I will say, so Ben, to your point, we've had a lot of conversations around what era of what kind of machine and what kind of parts, and how are we categorizing those, and how do we get those on back stock, so that we don't have to like knee-jerk panic, because knee-jerk panic just doesn't work when you're that far removed. So I think as you're listening here in the States, maybe you have a coffee shop in the States, just realize, especially if you're located in the Pacific Northwest, you have such a gift, right? Because you get a lot of these parts so much faster, so much more accessible. But to your point, Ben, I would say be careful of a lot of the newest, hottest, coolest looking stuff because that is cool for now. And maybe that'll last you for a set of years, but you are going to want to know how to get parts and not have to pay a tech $300 every time he comes out to work on machines because you don't know how it works, you know?
Yep.
Yep.
Good. You know,
And
I go ahead, Drew.
Well, I will say the one last point to take your sweet time is something that we did down in Belize was we had an extra machine. And because parts took so long to get there, we were kind of cannibalizing it to fix the one that was working. And in the heat of the moment, I didn't always take pictures of my electric. I didn't always label, the parts. I didn't. So when I then wanted to go fix the other machine that I'd been slowly devouring to feed the one that I needed, I didn't even know what parts I had taken off. I didn't even know what was missing. I didn't know. Of course, I can do a full visual diagnostic, but once I set the machine up and see if it runs or not, bench test it, the pictures come in handy, especially when it comes to electric. That's hydraulics, pretty simple to understand, but when it comes to electric, voltage, amperage, everything, it gets more complicated. So take your pictures, log everything you're doing. And people told me that, and I said, whatever, I'll be fine. I was fine, but after many hours of not being fine.
Great.
Try your stuff. I do think we live in a very special age where there's a lot of videos out there, right? There's a lot of YouTube out there. There's a lot of things you can ask. If you don't have a Cody that you can have on speed dial, like there's a lot of stuff you can drive. I thought it was great. Faith on our team did some diagnostics on how to fix a blender and ordered the piece. And she and the gal that worked one of our clients, they fixed their blender. All they had to do was reach out to her and say, hey, does this sound right? And she's like, yeah, that sounds right. Exactly. Do that. And they did it and they got it working back. And I mean, quick and easy and fast. And they were both excited. They both felt empowered. I know, Drew, last time I was down there, you were teaching one of our female managers, like the ins and outs of how this espresso machine works as you were taking it apart, like giving them a working knowledge. That's exciting. I also, as we tie up the show, heard somebody lately talk about taking the PDF of your machine, loading it into AI so that you can ask AI questions about the technology of your machine. I mean, I thought, man, how smart. Load all of your manuals into a piece of AI that you can then have conversations back and forth with Grok on like how it's going to work for putting this together so that you at least sound smart when you start talking to your tech.
Do you know if the AI is even like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, dude. You've got a problem.
Anyway, lots of cool stuff. Drew, thank you for being the guinea pig for our adventure down at Belize. And I will say though, man, I don't know what we do without you. So grateful for that and the complimenting of our partnership and what we do down there. So anyway, boys, thank you for giving us some time on the good old 4th. And any of you copy experts, I hope you enjoyed the show today. Any of you that are interested in talking more about grand openings, we would love to help you with that. If you haven't checked out coffeeexpertsacademy.com, 32 modules of us taking you from the basics all the way up to the most advanced on how to make your coffee shop work. Check that out there. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you coffee experts next week here on Coffee Experts.
Thanks so much for joining us today. For those of you who are looking to become a coffee expert yourself, we offer an incredible, thorough training online for opening your first coffee drive-thru at www.myfirstdrivethru.coffee.